Hello, Faxi Nadu here. Today in this video, I would like to discuss and show you in depth all about wave editors and what you could do with them and what they are all about. And to show this, we're going to be using sampling extensively, and we're going to actually be making our own sample pack, our own drum pack with some additional samples, and we'll show all the different things that you can do with a wave editor by doing all that. So just a little disclaimer before we start. I know that many of the things that you will see here, if not all of the things, you can actually do also inside your DAW, whatever DAW you're using. Most DAWs today, I think, have wave editors either built in or some sort of wave editing functions on the arranged themselves. But while your DAW is a professional application for multi-tracking and for arranging tracks and for building tracks and mixing tracks, your wave editor is your professional application for exactly how it sounds like, for editing waves, for manipulating and managing and editing waves. So while you can do it there as well, over here in the wave editor it's dedicated to these kinds of tasks. So for me, it's a great tool. I use it all the time, just as much as I use my DAW. Sometimes even more, because I use the DAW when I'm actually making music, but I use the wave editor just like all the time. So first of all, wave editors. This is one of them. This is SoundForge. It's version 7 that I'm using, and there's many newer versions. I don't even know what version they got to, maybe 10. I don't know. I could be mistaken. But I'm using 7 and I'm happy with it. It has everything I need, and it's a great stable version, so I'm happy with that. You can use any other wave editor. They all have similar functions, just like DAWs. They might do it like a little bit differently, but they mostly have the same functions. They might just be disguised differently. So SoundForge 7, and what I have open here is just a few files, and let's use this one for our examples and for what we're going to do. And the first thing that really comes to mind with wave editors is the whole idea of sampling and manipulating the samples. And this comes in many ways, shapes, forms, and usages. The one usage that you would automatically think about when someone says sampling, is creating samples, creating new samples. But that is not always, that's not the only application for sampling. Sometimes manipulating samples and actually going through the sample process, you could use it for samples that you already have and that are actually running in tracks. So let's say we have a recording. Let's say we just recorded this thing from some hardware and we're using it in a track, and we're loading this channel, this file, into the wave editor, playing it. So one of the first things that we'll notice right off the bat is, before we get into this specific sample, is the ability to zoom in all the way down to sample resolution, and down as far as on a horizontal axis, and as far deep as your sample, your bit depth, as far as vertical. So you can see exactly where the zero crossings are, exactly where the sample starts. You can actually snap your sample perfectly. Now we will get more into snapping once we make drum hits, where it's really critical. But just, really, first thing you notice is this ability to go really deep down inside the sample. And most sample editors within DAWs are not as, as deep as far as how their resolution that they can go into. Some of them can, but So the first thing we notice with this particular sample is, using this visual feedback, is that we notice it's really low in volume, and obviously we would notice it on a DAW as well, because we would see on our mixer. But here in the wave editor we also have really great visual feedback, and we see it's really low. So before we start doing anything that is like sort of creative, we first need to take care of a little bit of the technical side. So let's first give this sample a little bit of volume. This is actually a good value. I don't want to get it all the way, to the peaks. I just wanted to have a little bit of meat. and I'm working in right now in 24 bits resolution, and I know that taking it up even 10, 20 dB is not really going to distort or mess up the sound quality in any way. So it's really fine. And after I've done this, what I notice is that the sample has various peaks, right? It really looks untidy, and it could really use compression to kind of make it much neater. And again, this is something that, imagine you had this running in your DAW, so you would notice the peaks on your mixer. But this is great visual feedback. You're looking straight just at the sample itself, and you can really see where and by how much, and the relationships between the peaks and valleys. So let's get down to it. Let's compress this sample. And again, using this visual feedback, I'm going to just take part of like the median, where I want the whole. I want to knock the peaks down to around this area. So it's sitting somewhere between like minus 14, 15, minus 12, around there. And then the peaks are going all the way up to, we have minus 6.4. So yeah, they're really peaking. Let's apply compression. This is the R comp from Waves, and I'm going to get just a little bit below, below the median. I want to kind of tidy it up. Let's give it, just basic settings. It doesn't matter. I just want to show you. So maybe a little bit more ratio. I don't know. Yep. So what's great is that we actually, this visual feedback, we really see, how the compression works. And it's a really good way to understand and work with compression, because wow, you actually see what it did, and you can undo and put different settings until you get exactly what you want. But for our example, this will be good enough. But now notice that again, once these peaks are knocked, we've gained some headroom, right? Let's give it just so now, like, the highest peaks are at around minus 15, and I'm not going to take it all the way up anyway, so let's just give it, let's give it half of that. Let's give it around 7.5 dB. Maybe a little more. What I'm doing is, it's semi-random. It's just by kind of, you can do, it doesn't have to be, what I'm trying to say, it doesn't have to be absolutely technical. It could have been 10.5 dB, it could have been 11. It doesn't matter that much. You're manipulating and you're working. If this was actually for a track, then yeah, I might, make it perfect it. But I want to make samples out of this. That's what I want to show you. So I'm just kind of getting it into a condition that is workable. So I have now this file, and it looks a whole lot better than what we originally started with. And so we're talking wave editors and sampling. So let's use this file and make ourselves a whole drum kit out of this one file. And so what you need to do is you need to take little small spots, and they could be anything, right? And just to emphasize that, let's be random. I'm just going to highlight totally random spots. I have no idea what I'm taking, right? What about this little guy, just for fun? And this is the cool thing with SoundForge, is that what I just did just now is you can highlight an area, drag it, and it'll create a new sample. So I've just taken some hits. I assume they're kind of similar because this is, not such an interesting wave. Let's take the volume down a little bit on our mixer. Let's take this one. And for you guys. Okay, so I've taken various ones. And now I just want to bastardize them just for making, drums. So the first thing I want to do is shorten them a little bit. I could also not do it. This is totally up to you. I want to pitch shift this a little bit. I want to give it, Okay, kind of cool, right? But if you notice really well, listen. It's clicking, isn't it? Why is it clicking? Because it is not really hitting a zero crossing perfectly. So all you need to do is fade out this little bit at the end, but I'm going to fade out a little more because I want it to kind of feel more like a drum hit. Not exactly a drum hit, but let's say a zap. Okay, let's call it a zap. And the exact same thing we want to do. Oops, if you notice, we don't have a zero crossing here, and that'll cause clicks. Cut that out and give a little fade, just a few. It's not even a millisecond, you know, it's not even, it's nothing, but it does eliminate the click. So we have ourselves a nice zap, and what we're going to do, let's make ourselves a folder for that. Let's save all this. I'm actually going to put this online later. I'll go into my sample folders, Faxi samples, and let's call it editor tut samples. And then we have this zap. I'm going to call it zap A. And let's get some variations. Now, another thing, I can highlight an area instead of cutting. I can crop and it'll keep that, just like, you know, if you're using Ableton or something. There's a crop feature in there. Again, I have to fade it, right? So, I can save this. Now, another thing I want you to notice, right now my volume is around -5. So, what we're going to do is we're going to have all the samples of our sample pack around -5, just to have a uniform sound to the sample pack. Now it doesn't really matter if it was -2, if it was -6, if it was -9, whatever you want for your samples. But if you make it like, if you make them uniform, at least you can treat them like samples, like on any drum machine. You know, they're good core samples that you can load up quickly into a drum rack or something like that. And there won't be like a huge difference in volume. You won't have to, like, you know, get into every sample and manage the volumes and get really hectic. You have them basically more or less in the same area. So we have one. Let's get ourselves some little glitch in there. Now what you notice here is that the right channel is much louder than the left channel by about 4 dBs. I could leave it like that. I could have it like a pan sample. There's no problem with that. But I just feel like having it uniform, so I'm just going to give the left channel alone, by itself, 4 dB of gain. And this is another cool thing with a wave editor. You could do this with your DAW, but this is really quickly here, right? I can just, you know, choose one of the channels. So now they're around -7. Let's fade it out, and this is really short. This is a click sample. Notice that it's not even 15 milliseconds. It's not even like, it's like a cycle, right? So now we have this one a little lower. So this is just back and forth manipulation, as you see. And we had the whole, remember how we said to conform to around -5? So let's give the whole thing 2 dB now. And it's just like the other sample. And of course, the last thing we need to do is so we had our little zap. We have a click now. Click A. We can close that. And of course, you can make much better samples. You know, I'm just... this is pretty cool though. This is like a little pass. So let's take that. Let's crop. Let's go all the way in and see exactly, you know, it's not really ending here, is it? Because if we zoom all the way in, there's another cycle going. So I'm going to go all the way, as much as it lets me, and then I'm going to cut. And I'm going to do, well, first let's do volume before that, you know, let's do. So the difference is about 2 dB between them. Oops, the wrong one. it like. And let's fade the very end. You can fade different, you know, if I fade here, it'll have a different sound than if I fade here, right? But it's totally up to you. And of course, again, fade in. So now we have ourselves a little pass, and it's a little louder than the other samples, but just by a little bit. So you can take it down in volume if you want, but I'm just not gonna. I'm gonna call this pass A. And from this is actually one that we can use to do other things. Let's keep it here. Let's drag a new one from that one. Let's do two different things using that sample. So we have pass A already saved, and we have two more versions of it that we're going to manipulate separately into different things. So let's take this one. Let's for this one, let's just make it, you know, let's pitch shift it. And now we have a pass that is lower by 1 octave. And again, I did that little fade because I noticed that the pitch shifting process induced a little click at the end. I don't know if you can hear it on the video. Just a little click. And now it's gone. This is great. I like this too. I'm going to save it. So that's pass B. And why not? I don't even want to. Here I have preserved duration. I don't want to do that. I want to get. And now I have a really extremely bassy one. And it's probably getting into really dangerous frequencies already. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take away some of the low end. And by doing that, you know, most of the sound was on that low end. I'll re-volume it. Again, manipulation, do whatever you want, it's fine. So this is a little clicky, it's not that neat. But for the example, I will save it. I don't like this particular one too much. I could make much cleaner ones, but let's save it as well. And then we have this one. Let's get going with this. Let's make like let's use this short sample that is barely 300 milliseconds and make a really cool drone sound out of it. So let's do the pitch shifting process again, but in a different way. Let's go -12 for 1 octave, but let's not preserve duration. Get a little bit of a longer sample. Let's put a huge reverb on it, as big as we can. Let's go crazy with the pre-delay, just to have it an effect. No damping at all, biggest room size possible. Loud, dry, loud, dry, loud reverb, doesn't matter. Okay. So I've already got like a long sample. But then the tail gets really quiet. I don't need all that. Let's trim it. We're gonna fade it in the end, don't worry. And let's get into some tricks. Let's drag this into a new one. Reverse this. And then mix it back into this one, but cross-faded. So let's get rid of this. Now we have this, but I just want to show you all the quick creative things. So of course you could take any at any stage and save it as a sample, right? But I'm gonna just do crazy weird things. So I don't want this, and I don't want this. I want this area that is crossfading between the reversed and the original signal. So I'm just gonna randomly take part of this area, trim. Now I got this. Let's remember what we started with, just for the fun. We had not this. We had the original pass, right? We had pass A. So let's keep this open. And this is what it is at the moment. Now I want to put more reverb on it, but if I have my click, if I do not fade it now, the reverb will actually, the click will occur and the reverb will reverberate the click. So before I put more reverb on it, I want to fade it more. And then I want to reverb it. Again, let's put different pre-delay settings. Let's go crazy with it just to make it little. Trim that again. Give it volume. I don't want that attack. Fade. Well, let's do EQ before fade. EQ. Just take away some of the lows. And again, I'm just running through the processes. Just manipulating, doing whatever I feel like. There's no rules. You're making samples, you know, you're not mixing, you're not... Compressed it just a little bit to kind of gain a little bit of headroom. And fade out. Get rid of our little click here. Now I don't need a really punchy attack, so I can kind of take a little more. And we can call this, I don't know, drone A. It's not really such a long drone, it's not really a drone, is it? But and you can always continue, you know, you can remember we started with this. Now this is basically, look at it like clay in your hand. I can just go here and just continue messing it up. I can reverse one side, fade different areas, so I can get like a Doppler sort of effect, right? By doing this. Pretty cool. A little weird bass frequencies, but you know. Let's call this drone B. So I said we're going to be making drum samples, but I guess that's not really turning out that way. We're making, always I say I'm going to make something, and then I just end up making weird, messed up drones. But okay, but we will continue that. But let's take another thing that I want to show beyond this this sample. Another cool thing that you can do with wave editors is, I know a lot of you like to sample. I've kind of graduated from that. I don't really sample things that aren't mine anymore. But I used to, I admit, and you will forgive me, Star Trek. This is not for commercial purposes. I'm not going to use this in any way, but I'm just showing that you can load a video file of whatever you want, and it'll load the video and the audio, and then it'll show you the audio right here, and you can take little bits of it really quickly. And it's going to take ages now to read this vid. Okay, let's not wait for it. I just wanted to show you that it won't. This specific. Okay, did it do it? No, an error occurred. Okay, it doesn't like this file at all anyway, so it's not gonna play nice. But yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That this particular SoundForge, my one, doesn't have like all the codecs, so it might not load every single video file. But if you get a newer version, or if it's really that important to you, you can always also convert, the video file. But my point was that you can drop video files here, and it'll show you the audio just like it was audio pieces, and you can actually take, from your video really quickly and drag them onto new audio files, close the video, and you'll have all that to sample. So let's add. We didn't end up doing really a kick kit like I was planning to, but let's make some drums. So one of the things that you can do with wave editors is also start with a clean file that has nothing on it, and actually go to synthesis and synthesize sounds. And maybe you've seen in the past, I'm going to show you mimic the infected mushroom kick drum tutorial that they had online. And this is like a known way of making kick drums with a wave editor. Basically all the plugins like Bassism and whatever are this with knobs. So I'm just making a 200 millisecond sine wave at 60 hertz, and just pitch bending it, and you can make any bends that you want. Listen to it. Make 1 bend, 2 bends, 7 bends. So this is kind of like a Goa kick. I'm not going to spend much time on it right now for this tutorial. I just want to show you the method. So I've kind of faded the ending, maybe too vulgarly. I don't know. I'll take the last cycle. You can actually see more or less. I can zoom in all the way, but just for... And it's no longer clicking. And of course you can layer, you can do another pitch bend, you can compress this kick, you can EQ, you can do all that before you save it. Let's call this dumb kick. So that's another thing that you can do. And you can, as you saw, like right now we've made a few quick samples. If you spend, let's say you take one day where you work on music, like a hardcore session, what's that for you? Like a few hours at least, could be even a whole day. So, and you do just sit with a wave editor and create samples without thinking too much, putting a ton of effects on them, saving as you go along, and creating samples from samples. You could create just a huge library of really great samples really quickly. So just by spending one day, you can have like a few hundred megabytes of original samples that you've made and feel awesome about the fact that you've made them and that you're using your own samples in your music. And it really makes the whole conversation of sample packs and loops and all that mute, because you're just making your own, so you don't mind. Another thing I want to show you is, the whole snapping thing. This is really relevant to Ableton Live, for example. Let's say you're remixing a track from someone or whatnot. You want to add an audio clip into your track. And in Ableton, you have to snap it perfectly. You have to warp it and all that, tell it the BPM, all that process, right, to get it to warp and to work within your track. And this is something that many people find is kind of really, I wouldn't say hard to do, but annoying to do, and takes up time and hard to sometimes get perfect. So the wave editor is a tool that really helps you in that regard because you can really snap the sample perfectly before you bring it into Ableton. And then in Ableton, all you need to do is tell it, set your first warp marker on the start of the sample, and tell it the BPM, and that's it. You do not have to deal with where does this damn sample actually start and end and all that. So you just go in, zoom all the way in. Whoops, you see? If I didn't have this resolution, I might think the sample is starting here, but it's not. If I zoom all the way down, I can see there's a little bit more information, and that information over time, if not snapped correctly, you would actually lose, no matter how small it is. If you're going on a track that is 10 minutes, it'll eventually, even if it's just a fraction of a millisecond, it'll get more and more and more and more pushed out of sync as the track progresses. So I cut it. I can cut the ending as well, but you know what? Here it doesn't really matter if it's perfect or not, because then in Ableton it's really easy. Now, I don't remember the BPM of this. I think it's 150 BPM, so all I have to do now is load the clip in Ableton, put my work marker here, right click, set to 150 BPM, and then I will see the grid exactly, and I will know where it ends. I will know where to put it, because if it's on 17, it'll just loop 17, and it's perfect, and it's on time, and there's no more. It cannot get more accurate than this. Okay, this is just like the most accurate way that you can do it. Excuse me. So we could go on and on and on and on. I could show you sampling forever, but I kind of see no point, because the thing that you needed to see here is that I'm just being pretty much random. I'm doing crazy things. I'm putting whatever on whatever, and if I feel like putting applying 50 plugins to a sample before saving it, I'll apply 50 plugins. I'm not thinking about anything. There's no CPU involved, because it's being applied and forgotten about. So I can just go mad chaining, go mad creating. And while we're on the subject of CPU, this is also great to point out that, let's say you want to have in your DAW, you're worried about your CPU usage and your usage of many plugins and stuff like that. So things like EQ and compression and all that, if you do it inside the wave editor before even bringing it into your DAW, or also while you're working in your DAW, let's say if you have a track that's going and you have certain sounds inside that need to be EQ'd and compressed, you can just load them in the wave editor, apply what you need, save it, and then it's already on the wave, and you don't need to waste CPU, and your project is much neater with less plugins and with less going on. And that sample itself is saved in your library, perfectly snap, with good peak management, and good overall volume, and some minor EQ changes, and it's just ready to use again and again in other productions as well if you want. So your library of sounds is ever growing, even if you're not specifically sampling, even if you're just carrying on in the wave editor and making sure that all the stems and everything that you're using is in a good condition all the time. If you make music for a decade, you will have 500 gigabytes of great sounds that you've made just by yourself. I don't know, maybe even more. So check out the wave editing. I've just touched the tip of the iceberg right here. There's so much that you can do, and it's so rewarding. You know what? Before we wrap it up, I'll end. I want to mention one more thing. Yeah, and it's worth. I just want to show you this real quick because it's pretty cool, I think. So what I'm talking about is if I find it on my hard drive, yeah, it should be here. Give me just 1 second. Up, there we go. I want to look at the Ocean Star Empire, the first album. We had a track in the end. Yeah, this one, Eyes in the Dark. So what this track is an ambient track. And why I wanted to mention it is because this track, it does not use a DAW. We didn't use a DAW to make this track. What this track basically is the method I've shown here for sampling. What I've done for this track, I've went through all the Ocean Stars tracks through our project files, through our stems, and you can see it over here. Projects, backups. This is madness going through all these folders. Okay, so yeah, there it is. So what I've done, in order to make that track, is I went through all the Ocean Star tracks, and I've just picked out our different pads and atmos from different Ocean Star tracks. For example, this, I don't remember from which track, but these are sounds that were... And then what I've done is I've just manipulated them together and mixed them together free, totally free of time constraints, free of beats per minute, free of bars and, you know, quantizes and syncs and all that. Free flowing ambient soundscape mixed, you know, as I want it. Cross faded between the sounds, fades, and EQs and effects. Just like this, exactly like I'm showing you right here. Of course with a little more thought and preparation, but I'm just showing you the method really quickly. So that was, yeah. And then, you know, I can also obviously manipulate the whole thing. It just doesn't end, does it? Reverse this side, put a whole huge reverb on it, pitch shift the whole damn thing, yada 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 yada. So, yeah, wave editing is just an insane world that, personally, I love it. It's just so rewarding, and if this genre wasn't like the most obscure thing ever, I might just, you know, ditch DAWs altogether and just make just crossfade atmospheres into each other all day. But yeah, maybe in another life, guys. So I hope you took some cool things from this video and get creative with your own usage. And if you don't have one, get a wave editor. You'll have fun with it, I'm sure. See you later.